Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining with us. All right, my guest is John Gilchrist. He is the managing principal of Fundraisers Strategies. John, welcome to the show.
Michael, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm glad you're here again. Now, I wanted to dive deep into what we were talking about beforehand. We're talking about nonprofits, executives, and also how you differentiate between the for-profit business raising money, because a lot of them come on the show and do that, and the nonprofits, how they raise money. Is there a difference in tactic and strategy for these two companies or these two entities?
You know, the tactics are very much the same. You've got to appeal to what that individual, whether it's the bank or the venture capitalist, is looking for. Typically, they want highest ROI, they want equity stakes, etc. When you're looking at the nonprofit side, you're really looking at what that donor is most interested in. Are they interested in some facet of the nonprofit, whether it's providing art for free for all individuals, making sure that good health care is available to all, providing scholarships for education. So while the end result is the same in terms of the money, the psychology of you're appealing more from the for-profit, it's more and more, where there's on the nonprofit side, it's I'm doing something positive for my community. I'm doing something to lift people up, whether it's out of poverty, out of ignorance, what have you.
How do you get into their mind, though, to find out what their motivations are? That's the key that every ad agency wants to know.
Yeah, it really boils down to what you have to have a conversation with them. Now, technology's made it far more easier to have those conversations, whether it's via online polls, SurveyMonkey, etc. Sometimes it's what particular messages are those individuals clicking on in their email feed or texting feed? Are they listening to a personal story? Do they want the data? Are they interested in a particular type of service that the nonprofit is providing? And you start to piece together, and we talked a little bit about some of the AI applications that are coming to the forefront now. Those same AI applications that are now being quite prevalent in the for-profit sector, they can be applied to the nonprofit sector as well.
Talk to me about the 2017 tax impact in the sector.
Well, as you know, the 2017 kind of rewrote a lot of things about the tax law. Of particular note was the near doubling of the personal deduction, whereas anything married couple could typically deduct up to $12,000. The standard deduction was $12,000, and now it's roughly $24,000. So essentially, someone, in order to qualify for that higher, to write off more, they have to have more deductions, and it's mortgage interest. Of course, the state and local tax limitation of $10,000. It really doesn't affect as much here in Texas because we're traditionally a much lower tax state. It's really hurting clients in California, New York, Connecticut, Illinois, where you have a high state and local tax structure. It also made some changes to the deductibility. Larger gifts now are more deductible than ever before. So those mega gifts that we've seen so much of in the past several years, they actually are, the tax code actually provides an additional incentive, Michael. Not to get into the tax ramifications, but historically deductions, you could deduct up to 50% of your AGI, adjusted gross income, with charitable gifts. Now you can do it up to 60%. So people who are interested in making larger gifts to their university, to their place of worship, to a local hospital, to whatever, they can deduct more of it in the current tax year.
Do you see that changing going forward?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I think I'd be on probably be on the beach in the Cayman Islands with my private bank account. But it's hard to say what's going to happen. Remember, we will have the tax cut is effective for 10 years, and we will have 2 presidential elections in that span. We'll have 3 midterm elections. I'm sorry. So who knows what's going to happen with it? But we're probably not going to see any significant changes in 2020 because it is an election year, and the political parties are still in control of their respective branches of the House and Senate. What's going to happen in the future is really, I don't want to, I know your viewers deserve an answer, and I wish I had one. I think there will be some significant changes to our taxes over the course of the next several years, though. The issue is, will there be a cap on deductions? Right. You know, that was one thing that then President Obama and then candidate Hillary Clinton both seemed to espouse. They wanted to have that cap of $250,000 on charitable deductions, or the $250,000 is the income limit. It was almost penalizing people who really wanted to make significantly large gifts to their favorite nonprofits.
So do you see that if we change the political structure in the White House, the Congress, Senate, do you see that that's swinging back to trying to put that cap in place, or at this point it's probably pretty safe?
Well, I think
no cap.
Like I said, for the next 15 to 18 months, any kind of significant tax law is not going to go into it. Let's just say that the Democrats win the White House and they take control of the Senate in 2020. So the Democrats will run all three branches of Congress and the House, Senate, and the presidency. Right. Okay, so they take power on January 20th of 21. It's not like on January 22nd there's going to be this massive tax bill that's going to pass and it's going to be effective. So I would say probably for the next 2 years, we're likely to be okay. 2022, anybody's guess.
In regards to raising money, there is gala addiction, especially this time of the year, going through between now and the end of the year. Yeah. Everything's popping like that. Talk to me about the use of gala addiction. In other words, people be going to galas and putting on more and more and more and more, versus alternative ways to get to know the passions and the interest of the donors coming into that you want to attract to your nonprofit.
You know, you raise a great point in that there is particularly in this town, there is an attraction to the big fundraising galas, the evening, the night of the stars, what have you, and all that is fine and dandy. Don't get me wrong, as long as it's one component of a well-rounded fund development plan, where you've got your planned giving, your major giving, your annual giving. Yes, events do have a place, and they own a good spot on a good chunk of real estate in that development spectrum. But what the addiction gets into is organizations can find themselves that they're focusing from one event to the next event to the next event, and they don't take the time to truly engage with those donors to really find out, as you said, what drove you to come to this gala? Was it our mission? Was it because you liked somebody asked you who you trust? Maybe you find out, the nonprofit should find out what drew that individual, what motivated them to come to their particular addiction. To their particular gala. Right. Here I am talking about addiction.
That's okay. That can be an impersonal type of query, and it can be a very personal query. The personal one would be where we're standing there and talking to them, asking them straightforward the questions. In order to cover more ground, technology seems to be taking that personal touch out of it by surveys or watching their habits, their search habits through AI. Where do you find, is it a blend, or is there a more effective way to really get to know who your donors are so that you can really be more effective in your campaigns?
Right. When you take a look at the broad spectrum of potential donors and current donors, most nonprofits are pretty skilled at segmenting. They put their donors in different buckets: large donors, mid-range donors, entry-level donors. For the large donors, it's still the personal ask. They've got to have this level of interaction because that donor typically is going to want some very specific things accomplished with his or her gift, and that's their right to do so. The mid-level, that's where you kind of get that, if you will, that mushy middle. Mm-hmm. they're not quite at the major gift level, but they could become, you could drive their interest up to where they see that they can make a real difference with their philanthropic investment. The annual gift, the smaller donors, the 25, 100, 150 or so, it's highly unlikely that there's going to be a great deal of personal interaction. Classic adage in major gift fundraising: you spend 90% of your time cultivating, engaging with them on that relationship, and you spend about 10% asking. Flip it for annual giving. You're doing 10% cultivation. 10% cultivation. You're doing 90% asking. You don't have time to ask, sit down and peek with every individual who could make a $50 gift, for example.
Now, one of the things that are in some of the content that I know that you've published is questions that you should be asking either the board or yourself before you join a nonprofit board.
You raise a very very powerful point. Jumping onto a nonprofit board needs to be viewed with the same respect and due diligence as you would if you're wanting to get on a for-profit board of directors. There are, obviously, you have the 3 legal duties: duty of care, loyalty, obedience. So some of the questions that you need to be asking yourself if you are wanting to join a board, or if you've been asked on a board: what is it about that mission that excites you? What is it? What ignites your passion? When you are asked, you need to start taking a look at their finances. The individual has to do their due diligence just like anyone else would. What's their 990s, the federal tax return essentially for nonprofits? Take a look at, do they have sufficient reserves? Have they been profitable? Just because they're a nonprofit doesn't mean that they don't run a profit. They just plow it all back into their operations and services. You want to make sure that how long has the CEO been in place? If you have a revolving door, there may be an issue there. Don't know what might be going on. But those are some questions that you should be asking yourself.
What are some of the questions that maybe I should have been asking you through this interview that I could have missed? The things that you think are very important our audience needs to know about nonprofits.
Well, I think one of the things one question is how impactful has the tax cut been on nonprofit giving? Now, in 2018, it was really flat. There may be just a slight increase in terms of actual dollars. When you adjust it for inflation, it was just down a tick. What's more concerning is that the number of donors seems to be shrinking in America. That's the if you will, that's the big cross that we have to figure out.
Is that because of economics, or do you think it's because of interest?
I think it has a little bit to do with both. Obviously, the change in the near doubling of the standard deduction will keep some people from making a gift. Well, if you're on that cusp, say in the old style, you were near that $12,000, and it was October, November, you could feasibly write off more than the $12,000. Now it's more difficult, but the interest is really the issue. I think that's a big part of it. Nonprofits have to be the best storytellers possible. That's how we learn. That's how we create that emotional connection. It can't be enough that we're serving more people, we're doing more, we've got a larger budget now. Donors don't want to know that. I mean, it's not exciting, but they can relate to, here's an individual who you lifted out of poverty. You gave them some job training. I and other donors helped pay for that person to get a job training program. Now they're a welder, they're a plumber, they're something. But the point is that they're no longer in poverty. That's one of the exciting things about this Community Council of Greater Dallas initiative about the 5,000 jobs in 2020. It's not just 5,000 minimum wage jobs. These are jobs that they're seeking to create where you can support a family, you can support yourself. You're not having to take a second job. You're not having to get on some type of government assistance. These are real, productive, long-term jobs.
John, thanks for being our guest.
Delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me, Michael.
My pleasure. You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining with us. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and don't forget to download our new app on Apple and Android.